The topic for him is high risk coronary interventions during STEMI.
Yeah, I think very good afternoon. Are you able to hear?
Yes, sir, we are able to hear.
Yeah. Now, I think it's a lunch time. All are having an empty stomach, but still, I will try to expedite the process. I wanted to show some very high risk procedures, particularly during STEMI setting. So this is a that first initially I'll show some cases. After that, we'll discuss how to do this process. Even while continuing case also in between, I'll give some tips and tricks. This is a 32-year-old female present with one episode of chest pain shortness. Actually, she came as attendant. She was accompanying her father-in-law to hospital. So in the ambulance, suddenly she felt some episode of SOB type of picture with a panic-like reaction. Then attendants thought that because she is accompanying the father-in-law who is having a COPD, for his admission sake, she was accompanying. They thought it's only simple like a anxiety reaction. Then they brought the father-in-law. They admitted in ICCU, and while waiting for admission, suddenly she collapsed. While waiting, she collapsed with no pulse. So immediately, because she was next to casualty, she was put on her bed. Then immediately they carried CPR, and CPR was carried for almost 30 minutes, and DC shocks were given, nearly 5 to 6 shocks were given. And ECG showed extensive interval MI with wide QRS complexes. Echo showed apical and classic LED regional wall motion abnormal, but well preserved thickness. And that time we did the drop eye also. It was 24, and NT-proBNP was evaluated, and other parameters are fine. This is the after resuscitation of for half an hour. Patient, she is 32-year-old lady, sudden onset of symptoms. Earlier, she didn't have any symptom, and sudden cardiac arrest, and nearly half an hour CPR. This is the ECG. I think many of you are experiencing these type of things in your day-to-day practice. You see, then immediately pressure was not there. Then immediately we thought because extensive interval MI, nearly by continued half an hour CPR. Then we told we'll go with the ECMO guided PCR. So then you can see we have inserted ECMO using the right femoral vein and left femoral artery. This is the angiogram after ECMO. You can see the right side the cannula. This is the venous side cannula, and that left femoral artery cannula is there. You see left main normal, LED total occlusion, and you are not seeing proximal LED total occlusion, and no other wells are not having any significant disease. Then immediately we passed the BMW wire. Then we got some flow. Then we were surprised to see that kind of incident in a young female without any risk factors. Then we thought, then immediately we'll see what could be the reason for this MI. Is it type 1 or type 2 MI, or any spontaneous coronary artery dissection is there? So to assess, then we thought of doing the OCT for this patient. Then this is the OCT study of a young female. You can see very clearly these are the OCT picture, and primarily thick fibrotic with some lipid plaques. I'll show very clearly. This is the thrombus. You can see the plaque rupture. OCT showed the plaque rupture. This is a classic type 1 MI, plaque rupture leading to sudden acute thrombotic occlusion leading to STEMI of the anterior wall. Then proximal LED was stented with a 3 into 26 mm resolute integrity. And again, we did the OCT study, very well upholstered. So there is a lesion, mid LED is still not having. Then we wanted to see the OCT assessment, and that showed significant lesion. Then 2.75 to 38 the flow distally, it's not that good. Then ultimately we have to have a very good flow. So this is the post stent images, and distally 4.3, and here is a 2.7 square mm, 4.44. That means this area is a significant disease. Suppose if you land landing zone is at least minimal area should be 4.5 square mm or at least 4 plus. Then here you see 2.7% millimeter square. That means there is a significant lesion. If you leave it, the chance of recurrence is very high. Here even angiogram is showing some gray zone. So that's the reason we thought of extending one more stent, and everywhere expanded very well. The luminal area 5.5 square mm, 6.8 square mm, and video playing other? No, it's playing. Videos are playing. No? Yeah, this is the you can see the LED and distally 2.5. This is the final OCT views. You can see there is probably some malposition which was corrected, and this lady. You see the finally timidate flow, good antegrade flow, and patient developed episodes of VT during the next 48 hours, which were treated with IV quadran and Maxalf, and repeat check angiogram on second day was done, and which was showed very well patent stent without any stent thrombosis, and patient was maintained on high inotropic support, and ECMO was removed 4 days later. Patient developed a right upper limb venous thrombosis leading to right upper limb swelling, then which was treated with IV heparin and Novax. She developed right leg massive hematoma because at the ECMO site. So that led to almost fall in the blood hemoglobin level, and it fell down to 5.5 grams. So patient required multiple transfusions, and ECMO support was weaned off from 3 liters to 1 liter, finally removed on 4th day with repair of arterial and venous insertion sites because that was causing continuous. Patient improved hemodynamically and finally without any cardiovascular symptoms, and she was discharged on 12th post-procedure day. So this is a case where patient suddenly came with acute extensive anterior MI with hemodynamic collapse with a half an hour of cardiovascular CPR and emergency PCI, assessment of the STEMI cause, that is block rupture leading to type 1 myocardial infarction, and mechanical support has its own disadvantage because the large size seats sometimes it can lead to bleeding complications are very high. So infection may be there. So all these things you have to anticipate and address. And now the second case what we discussed, the 59-year-old female patient, known hypertensive and diabetic, also suffering from hypothyroidism, and patient developed extensive anterior MI, and this is the picture. See the extensive anterior MI, ECG showing ST elevation. And this female patient, diabetic, severe triple L disease, LAD is not, there is no flow in the LAD, total cutoff, LCS flow is less, and RAMS is significant disease. So the right corner, if you see a non-dominant, which is, so she is totally dependent on the left circulation, came with severe ongoing pain, acute MI, then immediately we put the BMW in the LAD, and see dilated with 2.5 balloon, and this LAD flow. We got the LAD stenting using the 2.5 into 38 Zions expedition. Then subsequently, this is the post-check angio. Flow is like a slow flow is there. Then we thought because still pressures were not improved, then we thought we'll open the other vessels also. Then this is the LCX balloon dilatation. Then LCX, you can see the LCX stenting 2.7 into 18 R0 stent, and then subsequently see the now flow is much better. Now then RAMS was stented with 2.5 to 16 mm conjure. So now the flow is fine, but if you observe there is a mild lesion in the LMCA, then we thought why to complicate, why to put so many stents. Already we have put 3 stents. Our intention was to do only LAD stent, Despite the LED stenting, her pain was unrelieved and ongoing pain with hemodynamic instability. Then we proceeded with LCX and the ramastents. Then 6 months later, she came with severe angina, almost anstomy presented with anstomy, severe ongoing pain. You see the angiogram showing the distal left main. This is very important. When you are doing, see that the proximal landing zone is plaque free. So plaque free zone should be there. If the plaque button proximal to the proximal landing zone or distal landing zone should be free of TCFA, that is plaque, lipid-rich plaque, and fibrous plaque burden should be less than 50%. Otherwise, the restenosis rate is very high. So then we thought, because distal left main tight lesion is there, that time we advised surgery, but patient was unwilling for surgery. Then you see the balloon is slipping because the severe fibrosis. Then we thought we'll use the Scoreflex balloon to dilate the LM to LCX, LED and LM to LCX, and subsequently our intention was to go with the DK cross stent because wells are of good size. And recent ESC 2018 guidelines and very clearly mentioned in left main bifurcation, wherever possible, the DK crush is the preferred option when you are using the T2 stent because of the favorable data showing the better mesh rate. So then we did the balloon dilatation. So then this is a post dilatation. LCX was stented with 3.5 to 13 mm Orsiro stent, and intention is to crush the proximal portion of the LCX stent struts in the left main. So this is a crushing using 3 into 10 mm NC truck balloon, and you can see very clearly after crushing. Then recrossing of the LCX struts using 1.5 to 1.25 to 10 mm Tajuna balloon, and then open. Subsequently, first kissing was done using 3.5 to 10 mm NC balloon LED, 3 into 10 mm NC balloon in LCX. This is the first kissing. So cross these struts, open it, then put the balloon. Suppose if you are able to cross, if the strut is like a cell size is good, sometimes it may go, but many times you have to open with a small balloon and put the post dilatation balloon and do it. And then this is the post final kissing balloon. Then for post first kissing, then you see the LMC2 LED stenting, 4 into 20 synergy stent was implanted. Post dilatation of LCX done with 3 mm and 3.5 balloon in the LED. Now this is a final kissing balloon. Again, final kissing balloon using 3.5 into 10 in LED, 3 into 10 in LCX stent. So this is a young lady came with a young diabetic patient, came with STEMI. All 3 wells are diseased or right coronary non-dominant, and initially underwent LED, LCX and Ramus stenting. And unfortunately, 6 months later, she developed a severe restenosis of the distal left main. And then we used DK cross stent of the left main distal bifurcation. And this was done about 3 years ago. Still, she is asymptomatic, is doing well. So that's the reason, even if the complex PCA is there, this is the part. Always, once you complete the final kissing balloon, or before crossing the struts, try to do the part. This is a final part we did with 4.5 to 12 mm. We always perform left main interventions with image guidance either. We use IVUS or OCT. Nowadays, we are using OCT also more frequently. We use IVUS preferably if they have a renal dysfunction, patients have hostile left main disease, or severe elbow dysfunction, or pathogenic shock where the contrast can cause renal, can cause contrast nephropathy. So nicely expanded stents. Now this is the final result. This is the final result. So STEMI with severe triple well disease addressed with 3 stents, cardiogenic shock stabilized, then When you see the patient with acute MI with STEMI, short window period, no need of hemodynamic support because myocardium is fine. There, your intention is to open the vessel as early as possible. If you improve the blood flow, immediately pressures will pick up. Only patients who are coming very late, particularly when the pressures are because some kind of myocardial necrosis is there or sudden myocardium is there. In such cases, in spite of improving the flow, if the pressure is not improving, that time these patients require the hemodynamic support to allow the repair of the myocardium and to give a rest to the myocardium to and at the same time improve the cardiac output so that the uh, renal injury is not there, multi-organ dysfunction is not going to set in. So this is another patient, 52-year-old male, hypertensive, present with epigastric burning discomfort, as well with the shortness of breath. And this patient, if you see the angiogram, massive thrombus of the left circumflex. Patient was in ICCU, patient developed ischemic MR, severe pulmonary edema, and we gave a ventilatory support and really massive thrombus. Sometimes even simple dominant left circumflex because papillary muscle dysfunction can be fatal. So this patient then we thought immediately if you do the procedure, it will be a catastrophe because already flow in the OM branches are very slow, large thrombus, and already patient is developing pulmonary edema, everything. Then, then we gave him this is a right coronary non-dominant, and you see we gave intracoronary therapy that is tenecteplase 15 mg, and we also give a glycoprotein 2b3 blocker intracoronary 10 ml of abciximab, and 3 days later we did check angio, relatively regressed thrombus, slightly dissolved thrombus, and you can see the brisk flow relatively in all the OA branches and LCX, and hemodynamically improved, and symptoms improved like a pulmonary edema subsided, and because the symptoms markedly improved, we thought we'll give a 1 month anticoagulant and antiplatelet therapy, and we can do the repeat angio 1 month later. And if that time really significant lesion is there, suppose in such patients, if despite of giving all the treatment, if hemodynamically unstable, ongoing angina and SFOB is there, that time you can think of the angioplasty. Otherwise, if the patient is stable, maintain on medical treatment, and 30 days later, we take him to the cath lab. Here, if you see the LAD, you can see very short segment lesion. I personally feel if any one of if I take somebody's opinion, what to do for this patient, I'm very sure everybody says like go conservatively. And here only it's showing is a relatively short segment tight lesion, but here it's not very significant. So we wanted to see what exactly the lesion. Then you can see very clearly we were trying to cross the lesion with the initially we tried cyan blue and XT. Suddenly patient developed chest pain and it got closed. Angiographically it's not that severe, very short segment lesion, and this patient was getting pain and developed ST elevation, anterior leads, profuse sweating, hypotension, and suddenly picture changed. What we thought angiography is a very mild lesion, and to assess the OCT assessment, what could the lesion, just by putting the wire it got closed. Then finally with the Gaia we could cross. This is a microcatheter injection. What is going on? Then finally Gaia wire crossed the lesion with great difficulty. Then pre-dilatation using the 2.5 to 15 mm mini track balloon. Then we did the OCT. What went wrong? You see very tight stenosis, and this is a recanalized thrombus. You can see the switch is pattern like you can see lotus root. You can see that this is the here distal landing zone 5.19. LAD ostium has also disease that 4 square mm. but it's a recanalized, very tight lesion. That's the reason patient got sudden occlusion. Then you can see here in OCT, left main, you can see very clearly 10 square mm. And the distal left main is 6 point, this is LCX, and ostial LAD is 6.2. And you can see the everywhere the red thrombus you can see very clearly. I'll show. Now immediately we stented the proximal LAD with the 3 to 28 mm, and post-stent images you can see very clearly expanded stent, and LAD as in 6.5, and this made that distal is without any dissection very well expanded stent, and we see 6.2, 6.5, 6.7, every area is very good, and L6 is very well patent, LAD is very well patent, left main is 8 square mm. Now the flow is good antegrade flow, and now subsequently we went ahead with the LCX procedure, and this is the OCT assessment of the LCX. This is the ectatic segment. You can see this is the disease segment involving the ostium of the LCX to the proximal portion of the ectatic segment. You can see that this is the entire ectatic segment of the left circumflex, and this is the L6 distal bifurcation, OM branch. And you can see the length also, exactly what length is diseased. And you see the area is minimal lumen area 3.4 millimeter square, and ostium also, this distal left main 9.3, and ostium of the LCX is 6.2 square mm. And subsequently OCT assessment of the length of the lesion. So then we extend the stent. We have decided to take 2.75 to 12 mm stent, Zions expedition, extending from the ostium of the LCX to the proximal portion of the ectatic segment. This is the, you can see, ectatic segment, and covering only disease segment, and now we got very good area, that is 7.1 square mm, and even here also L6 ostium is 6 millimeter square mm, and MLA. You see L6 is distal bifurcation, like OM and L6 is nicely patent. So based upon this image, now the LAD is very well flowing, and the L6 is very well patent. Now, initially patient came with a massive thrombus of the left circumflex, treated with intracoronary thrombotherapy, intrathoracic abscissimab, and subsequently stabilized him for with anticoagulant therapy for 1 month. 1 month later, resolved thrombus with the tight stenosis of the LCX, and recurrent thrombus in the LAD, which was not seen very clearly in angiogram, which was addressed because of the sudden occlusion during the procedure and addressed with the stenting. So this is an unusual presentation. Sometimes you will see surprises while doing procedures. This is a 49-year-old male, non-diabetic, presented with post-step angina, CAD, ACS, and evolved that. Actually, it was referred by the one of the doctor who is related to the patient. One day prior to admission, patient developed burning sensation, left arm pain, but she ignored and she didn't take admission. Next day she came with a mild epigastric discomfort. Then we did angiogram. The angiogram, if you see, there is a thrombotic involvement of the ostium of the left main coronary artery. You can see the large thrombus involving the. You are unable to see the diagonal. Diagonal is also significantly diseased. The right coronary dominant, L6 is a non-dominant. So large dominant, very large type 2 type of LAD with a massive thrombus of the left main. So again, this patient was treated with 10 plus 10 milligrams intracoronary, abscissimab 10 ml intracoronary was given. Next day we did the check angiogram. Our intention is was to go with PC of the left main using image guidance. Surprisingly, thrombus resolved, and there is a mild narrowing of the ostial left main, the proximal left main. So our intention to see what is the area of the left main, what could be the reason for thrombus. And if you see the now the diagonal is flowing very well. Now previously hardly TB1 flow. Now the patient is having a very good flow in diagonal. It's a big branch. And now you can see the pre-tenth place, you can see the large thrombus in the left main, and now the recanalized thrombus in the left main, and the diagonal is very well patent, which is a big branch. Then we did the OCT study. You see the OCT study, this is the ostium of the left main. You see the lipid plaque, large lipid plaque with a thin cap fibroatheramata, and I don't see any plaque rupture. It could be because of the erosion leading to thrombus formation. And this thrombus gets dislodged and embolized to LED diagonal branch and occluding the diagonal. That's the reason initially diagonal was occluded because of the thrombus, not because of the obstructive disease, obstructive atherosclerotic disease. So that is reducing the flow. Then you can see the thrombus at the LED D1 bifurcation, thrombus projection in the diagonal ostium, and this is the LED, this one. Now LED LMCA ostium is totally thrombus free, and area, if you see, area is 9 square mm. That means as per the criteria, if left main area is less than 4 square mm, needs intervention. If between 4.5 and 6 square mm, needs FFR study to assess the functional significance of the left main. If the more than 6 square mm, no need of any intervention. So here, if you see, very lipid-rich plaque more than 270 degrees. Here also almost 360 degrees, and you can see this is inflamed plaque, and now recanalized. It's erosion leading to embolism. So this patient we didn't do any angioplasty stenting. Only we advised her to continue a small dose of rivaroxaban with the antiplatelets for another 1 month. Now patient is absolutely doing well. So this is how we analyze. You can see the distally trilaminar structure. Though vessel diameter is small distally, it's a plaque free because trilaminar structure you are able to see. Here also trilaminar structure is a LED diagonal bifurcation, and diagonal is very well flowing well. That homogeneous of the ostium is because of the thrombus, not because of the any obstructive atherosclerotic disease. And when you are giving more of antiplatelets and thrombolytic therapy, you have to be very careful. Patient developed acute hemorrhage of the anterior abdominal wall, material transferred with 2 packed cells, and subsequently recovered very well without any problem. This is I think, final case, and the patient, 59-year-old male, known hypertensive and diabetic, and anti-tuberculosis treatment for TB spine, present severe ongoing chest pain, assessed with profuse sweating and hypertension. Pressure was 90, and when we shifted him to cath lab, and initially he had NSTEMI, that subsequently anterior ST elevation, and patient developed BTBF, and which was treated with DC shock. And this is the angiogram. You see the distal left main, where is a tight stenosis, 90% lesion before bifurcation involving the shaft, and the right coronary tight lesion, and L6 is non-dominant, and right coronary is a dominant, big vessel. So when you see his patient is ongoing pain, hypertension, severe pain, distal left main tight lesion, and right coronary proximal tight lesion. So our intention is to go ahead with the dominant right coronary to give a support to left main while doing the PC of the left main. And this the stenting of initially pre-dilated 2.5 to mm, and surprisingly 3 balloons got ruptured. We were putting the balloon, and angiographically calcium is not that much seen, but when we are passing the balloon, every balloon 1.52 mm, all 3 balloons got ruptured. Then we were forced to use guide liner, then dilated with 2.510 and implanted with a stenting 3 into 26 resolute, high pressure inflations. So here, when you are seeing the resistance, when you are unable to place, when ongoing pain, please don't try buddy wire or any other procedures or immediately take guideline, push the stent and implant it. So the guideline is the best choice in this. So expedite the process, quickly finish the procedure. Otherwise, the patient will fall into vicious circle, and you may not be able to revive the patient condition. So after finishing PCF, RCA, suddenly we have removed JR catheter, but patients suddenly developed episodes of BTBF and cardiac arrest. Then CPR was done, DC shocks, almost multiple 4-5 DC shocks were given. Then while carrying CPR, then immediately we engaged right coronary and we gave injection. Is there any right coronary problem? Luckily, right coronary was flowing well, timigrate through. And we thought of any pericardial effusion, echo was done, emergency. Always any hypertension with sudden catastrophe, always rule out pericardial embolism as well as sudden stent thrombosis. And both are fine, then immediately you see these are the ECG strips showing the recurrent VTVF, and this is a right corner injection, now flowing very well. Then immediately we engage the left main and some French EBU catheter, cyan blue, into the LAD, and L6 was wide with BMW wire. Then these are the multiple pre-dilatations, and then subsequently we implanted 3 to 34 resolute onyx, and this is the part with the 4.5. Always, at least the most of the time, the left main will be more than 4 plus. If you are not using image, use the Finet's law and take the LAD diameter, L6 diameter, and based upon that you can assess the size of the left main, use the appropriate part balloon. And this, you will have a problem of using Finet's balloon if they have a diseased LCX and a diseased LAD, but most of the time, even in India also, always left main will be more than 4. At least dilate with 4, and many times we see 5.5 also. So post dilatation of the LAD stand, then 3.5. Post PTCA, this is the check angio, but distal landing zone is not healthy. You can see the diffuse long segment lesion. Then have you landed in any fibrotic or lipid-rich clot? This is very important. If you don't land in healthy landing zone, chance of restenosis is very, very high. For that sake, we did imaging. Then imaging will show very thick fibrotic plaque with calcium. You can see the calcium plaque and thick fibrotic plaque. And the proximal stent is very well expanded, nicely open. And then you can see the, this is the area you can see very clearly. Distal edge of the stent 4.6 square mm, proximal edge 7.5 square mm, ostium 5.6. So everywhere is nicely expanded without any mallocation. And distal left main area is 8 square mm. That means the area is, we have achieved our target. And mid LMCA 11 square mm, proximal LMCA 12 square mm, LM bifurcation, AC almost the diameter is L6 diameter 3.1. So we achieved our target, and then distally you can see the long segment fibrotic lesion. Our intention is to intention was to do the stenting of this segment. If you leave it, definitely chance of restenosis. This is a high risk PCI because right coronary was addressed, left main to LAD was stented, and you see the distal landing zone 3.5 square mm. See, middle AD area is 2 square mm. That means it's a very significant disease, fibrocalcification, long lesion, then pre-dilatation, then this is the stent, final post-stented. You see the image. So when you have a critical lesions of the right corner left main with ongoing chest pain with STT changes, and you decide which is the largest vessel and whether you need backup or not for that vessel, and choose appropriate strategy and manage it. This procedure was performed within total procedure time was 1 hour 40 minutes. Fluoro time was 28 minutes. And the contrast used was 200 ml and Visipac 200 ml. And so particularly when you are doing the PCIs, use radial axis as much as possible because the MACE rate is low, mortality rate is low with the radial artery axis. This has been shown in the Matrix trial and STEMI radial trial and rival trial, many trials. This is the meta-analysis. In all the trials, the radial is favorable over the femoral, but even because now the slender sheath available, using the slender, you can use the 7-French guide catheter, you can do the rota, you can do left main bifurcation through the radial, unless particularly in females where the spasm is more, where tortuosity is too much, in such circumstance only go ahead with the femoral. And infarct-related techniques. Stenting is recommended for primary PCI as per the guidelines. Use the current generation, latest possible. And in more complex anatomy, always treat the culprit. Take enough time and read the angiogram very well. And which is the culprit, you do that one. Still hemodynamically unstable, ongoing pain is there. If there a co-culprit lesion is there, that also you can address. Always ECG and symptoms are very important, and echo also very important to decide the culprit vessel. Suppose if one area is particular regional bowel machinery and the ECG showing in that territory, address that vessel very well. And thrombus aspiration is a class 3A. STEMI is the thrombotic complication, unstable atherosclerosis block, and only in few selected patients where the massive thrombus is there, in such patients, you can try. Suppose if a very delayed onset, sometimes thrombus already organized, in that case it may not work. But a massive thrombus burden and very loose when you see radiolucencies in the thrombus, if they are coming early, if a large segment is there, prior to stenting, use the thrombus aspiration. Otherwise, if there is a thrombus with a short segment tight occlusion, use a short segment balloon, dilate it, and if the good flow is there, you can go ahead. But still, flow is not good, thrombus is there, don't put stent, that's a catastrophe, that may lead to static surgery. So, pre-dilate with a small balloon, see how it is behaving. Some anticoagulant flow is there, no good, massive thrombus is there. That time you can stent. If the thrombus is there, try to aspirate before putting the stent. Other option is also sometimes if when the distal segment you are unable to see, take a small balloon, go distally as far as possible, dilate distal with a small balloon and small to distal to proximal, and many times you get flow. Once you get the flow, you can implant. Until you get the flow, you try different techniques before implanting the stent. Suppose without flow, if you put the stent, it's a catastrophe. So non-infarct related artery strategy is very, very important. This is very important in STEMI patients. Before discharge, you can see if really significant, you can do the FFR study, and FFR is positive, you can go ahead with the stenting, otherwise you can leave it. And in cardiogenic shock, you have done the culprit vessel angioplasty, hemodynamically stable, no need to do it. If still hemodynamically unstable, ongoing angina is there, even other vessels also have to be done. This is a complete revascularization study. So, in this one, always in patients with cardiogenic shock, this study has shown only culprit PCA is better compared to multivessel PCA. So the final tips and tricks when you do the primary PCA, time is muscle, try to get the flow as early as possible and try to open the vessel as quickly as possible to salvage the myocardium. Carefully analyze the symptoms, history and ECG. Based upon that, you decide the culprit vessel, and wherever possible, prefer the radial over the femoral artery because the MACE rate is favorable with radial access. And start from the contralateral coronary injection and with the diagnostic, then take the guiding catheter for culprit vessel. Identify culprit vessel and use the safer non-polymeric hydrophilic guide wires, small balloon thrombus aspiration before implant the stent, restore the flow, then subsequently you put the stent. Many times direct stenting some people try, but if the thrombus is not clear, if you are putting that, it will be a problem. And in STEMI, the most of the time they will have associated vasospasm. So it is many times we tend to underestimate the size of the vessel. So give a nitrates adequately before implanting the stent to fix the right size stent. Otherwise, what happens if you are putting a understent thrombotic vessel, next day patient may have a acute stent thrombosis. Never afraid of doing post-dilatation in acute setting. Adequately dilate because many times because of the vasospasm, vessels are undersized, and complete revascularization, and that means to do the culprit before discharge. You can do the other vessels also if it is very significant. If borderline or you are not very sure, take the functional assessment and do it accordingly, and expect the unexpected analyze and anticipate possible issues, plan strategies to tackle them. No knee-jerk reaction. For every action, you think twice before proceed with your action. It is a science. Manage it with knowledge and meticulous planning. Past experience, take help of others who have enough experience. Don't hesitate to call your seniors or even youngsters who have a good experience, and two minds are always better than the one mind. So always don't hesitate, don't feel prestigious when you are, don't feel guilty in asking for help, and always you should be willing to help others also. So it's like a team approach, because sometimes you may have a different type of thinking. Other person may give a different, he may throw a light in a different angle, which will be helpful to the outcome of the patient. Sharing of ideas always helps. Hard work with patience and honesty never fails. And intention of showing this one, because many complex cases we encounter while doing STEMI interventions, and these patients need a meticulous planning. And definitely, if you take appropriate steps, outcome will be better. And with that intention, I thought of showing these cases. I thank Sun Pharma and all the listeners for viewing this one. I thank on behalf of Sunshine and my colleague and senior international college, Dr. Shavindra Singh, for participating in this one. I thank each and everyone from the bottom of the heart. If anybody has any doubts also, any questions, you can ask us. We are ready to clarify. Share.
Thank you, Doctor. For now, there are no questions, but this entire webinar will be archived on DocPlexus, and I'm
Okay.
sure that post that there will be many questions which you can answer on a later stage.
Yeah, thank you
So,
very much. Thank
yeah,
you
so
all
thank you, Dr. Sridhar
people for
Kasturi.
arranging this webinar.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sridhar Kasturi and Dr. Shailendra Singh, for
You
taking
can.
your time out from your hectic schedule, especially during this pandemic time, and enriching us with your insightful presentation. And thank you, delegates, for attending this live webinar on a Monday afternoon. This session will be archived on Sun Pharma Info Center Access 360 and can be viewed further. So definitely you can drop in your questions later on, and both the speakers will answer the questions then. We at Sun Pharma believe in keeping you ahead in knowledge updation and will continue to do so and bring you many such resourceful webinars in days to come. So thank you, doctors, and have a good day.